McEnroy of Product Design Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the third, what is the third and final session, actually, of our online series exploring some of the key elements when negotiating, I guess, the often difficult pathway between concept to commercialisation. I'm Ali McEnroy. I'm the CEO of Technology Scotland, which is the home of Product Design Scotland Network. Many thanks for taking the time to join us this morning. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. You'll probably all know the drill by now. You'll notice that you are all on mute and your videos are off for the duration of the session, but we do want this session to be as interactive and as engaging as possible. So we do encourage you to use the chat functionality to introduce yourselves and make comments, and most importantly, to ask questions of our panelists as they present, and you can submit those questions at any time. Sorry, so things popping up all over my screen here. We're just confused me a little bit. Okay, so on to today's session. So today we're going to be discussing the latest 3 topics which have been published as part of our ongoing Product Design Scotland Toolkit. We are now up to 10 topics, which we'll touch on just a second. But today we're going to be looking at scaling manufacture and supply chains. We're going to be looking at engineering change management, and we're going to be looking at recruitment. And we'll be doing so in the capable hands of our expert panel in the form of Russell from White Blue, with Rory from NMIS, and in a pre-recorded format of Ben from Enigma People as well. You'll notice as well that we've got plenty of time for Q&A at the end, so we very much encourage you to make use of that as well. Okay, just very briefly, an introduction to Technology Scotland and Product Design Scotland. Apologies for those who have been on these sessions before. Technology Scotland is the cluster management organisation for Scotland's enabling technologies sector. We have 125 members across our 3 networks, of which Product Design Scotland is one. And our aims really are to I guess, well, our aims are as they are in the screen, but we were formed really in recognition of the importance that we felt product design had to the wider innovation supply chain in Scotland. As you'd expect, as an organisation like Technology Scotland, we work with a lot of very innovative, young, often small companies, and we have seen how success and failure of new and emerging technologies can hinge on getting some of the fundamentals correct, and design is certainly a key aspect of this. But we have wider aims to promote the value of strategic design, and to raise the profile of the sector that we have in Scotland, and also to create new networks, I guess, by bringing together our technology and innovation expertise with our design expertise, and that's really part of the group and part of the reason for this toolkit and these sessions. Okay, but we don't do this in isolation or on our own by any stretch of the imagination. It gives me a quick opportunity just to thank everybody who's been involved with product design and this toolkit, to NMIS, who are not only our network sponsor, but obviously our partners on this series of events, to Scintilla and Enigma, who support Technology Scotland across all of our networks, and then to all those who are directly involved in Product Design Scotland and partners within that. And we're going to be hearing, of course, from a couple of those today, but those other ones that you see, they've all been involved in producing some of the toolkit that has been developed over the last 3 months. Okay, why did we decide to create a toolkit? Well, it all started with some events we did last March, which led to an online series that we did with the Knowledge Transfer Network, looking at the design to manufacture journey. And we were aware that this is often a tough journey, particularly in the hardware arena. And turning an idea into a commercial product is tough. Failure rates are very high, as the evidence will show you. So on the back of that event and online series, the KTN produced a guidebook on the design to manufacture journey, which you can see on the screen there, and I very much encourage you to go and have a look at. But we were also very keen to create, I guess, our own toolkit in this area, and our member organisations were very keen to do similar, to provide, I guess, a sort of digestible sort of, almost chapter-like approach to some of the key elements that may come up when negotiating that journey, all the way from some early design considerations and business case development through to change requirements and right through, as we'll hear today, to things like scaling of manufacture and supply chains. So trying to cover a large number of different areas. Excuse me. So we have now published our first 10 toolkits, which you can find on the Product Design Scotland website. I'll pop a link into that later on in this session. But I do encourage you to go along, and as well as the 3 you'll be hearing from today, you'll see a lot more detail on the previous 7 as well. Okay, that's just about it from me. Any questions on that, then please do get in touch, either with me directly or through Product Design or Technology Scotland websites. But it now just leaves it to me to leave you with the agenda to pass you on to Hannah Leslie at NMIS, who is going to facilitate today's session. So Hannah, over to you.
Thanks very much, Ali. Yes, so I'm Hannah Leslie. I work in the NMIS commercial team, and NMIS, if you're not aware, is the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland. And yeah, this is the third and final instalment of this series, which has been a great success so far, and we've had some really interesting panelists. And just to give you a brief overview of who we are and what we aim to do, the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland is a group of industry-led manufacturing research and development facilities. We aim to work across the public and academic sectors, and with industry to transform skills, productivity and innovation, and make Scotland a global leader in advanced manufacturing. We will increase productivity by reducing barriers to innovation, stimulate investment and increase manufacturing competitiveness, catalyse job creation and strengthen supply chain links, inspire and attract talent, and equip current and future workforces with the skills that they and their businesses need. And finally, we'll work with manufacturing businesses of all sizes across all sectors, looking to provide benefits across the whole of Scotland. So NMIS is operated by the University of Strathclyde, but we're in a broad network, and we're supported by numerous different parties. A few of them are listed here, but it really is a cross Scotland initiative, and that includes public sector, other universities, and of course industry. The NMIS group, as I say, it's a collection of facilities. The ones that are open just now, in terms of their physical facilities, are the Advanced Forming Research Centre and the Lightweight Manufacturing Centre. We are having a new facility being built out near Glasgow Airport at the moment, that will house our digital factory, which is in development, the collaboration hub, and our manufacturing skills academy. But we are open for business now. Our teams are very well equipped and well able to support companies as of today. So that's all as a brief preamble, and we'll get on to our speakers next. The first of which is Russell Overend, who is the founder and director of Wide Blue, and he's going to be speaking to us about the key steps in scaling manufacturing and managing supply chain. So I'll hand over to you, Russell.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. Let's see if I can share my screen to get started here. That one. Okay, you guys seen that okay?
Yep, there you go.
Take that as a yes. All right. Well, first of all, let me just say it's impossible to cover all the aspects of scale up into manufacturing in just 20 minutes. So I'll kind of try to do it as a little flyby here. And obviously, if any of you've got any questions, you can we can talk about it at the end, or you can contact me direct on some of the websites or email there. Okay, so a little bit about me and why I'm talking about manufacturing. I'm one of the founders of Wide Blue, which was set up in 2006. I've held various roles there, from managing director to project manager. And basically Wide Blue was set up as a management buyout from Polaroid's European Design Centre. And I've had various roles within Polaroid before that in manufacturing, in eyewear, which is sunglasses, film divisions, hardware, camera production in various parts of the world. Before that, I was worked for, I always think of it as Barn Stroud, but now called Thales, in their kind of design and production areas. Worked in aircraft stuff at Triplex Glass in Birmingham. And more recently, I've introduced ISO 13485 quality management system for medical devices in 9001 to Wide Blue. And Wide Blue is a private company that basically support clients through the full design process into development and into manufacturing. We've now grown to 24 staff in Glasgow and about 3 million turnover. I'm a physicist by training. So a little bit about Wide Blue. We basically develop new products and take them into manufacturing. So they're not our products, they're our clients' products. And we work with the clients, regulatory experts, whatever, to get the products ready for manufacturing. And we're kind of known for optical products, so optics, lasers, photonics, etc. We're also known for medical devices, and we've got the accreditation for that as well. And a lot of the stuff we do is first of their kind, based on novel technology or IP. And more recently, we were acquired by Pivot, and they're a US manufacturing company with sites in US, Philippines, Taiwan, China, and now Mexico as well. So the skills that we've got are obviously a lot of the early stage product design and development stuff, but we also apply our knowledge to design products that can be manufactured, and then we do either startup manufacturing in-house in typically small volumes, or as you can see here, we've got employees that have traveled to, this is a factory in China, to do a startup of a high volume camera in the Far East. So we've got experience of working Scotland, UK, USA, and the Far East. So let's talk really about the transition from product design into volume manufacturing, and that is a very tricky, slow, and expensive journey to navigate. If you get it wrong, it's going to cost you. Either by making late changes to the product, or if you've got any manufacturing problems that you haven't anticipated, they'll cost you through either scrap or rework, or even worse, product recalls. Tooling and component costs for volume startup is usually pretty expensive as well, particularly at the moment if it includes long lead time items. We've got a lot of customers at the moment that are pre-buying computer chips, obviously at the moment, in order to kind of secure their production slots. So all of that has a funding and cash flow implication, and get it wrong and it's going to cost you. To get it right, therefore, you have to do some early planning and early selection of suppliers. You have to think ahead and have all the components and assemblies thought through and managed properly. So to get it right, you need to be flexible with volume, because for a lot of new products, your volume predictions, we most often find that they're optimistic, and for new products into manufacturing, they typically take longer to do and longer to ramp up. A couple of occasions when it's gone the other way, but it requires that you've got a degree of flexibility in the plan for that. So it's been covered at some of the earlier topics that Product Design Scotland have published, but this is the Wide Blue standard new product development process from early stage, what we call fuzzy front end, where you'll kind of have some sketches and concepts, maybe do some early business cases. You'll go through feasibility, make some technical proof of principle models and rigs, and then you'll kind of do a first detailed design of some of the principles and produce a technology demonstrator. At each stage, you'll have a stage gate review, and there's a big chunk here for design for manufacture, and you do a design freeze, manufacturing scale up, you do a lot of testing, and then you both of the product and of the market, and then you launch the product for sale, and then obviously you're into steady state manufacturing. But it doesn't stop there, because you then got improvements to products and cost reductions for products. And Typically, the designers that get involved at the early stages will see a product through to the end, and we still get requests for design changes, cost reductions, upgrades, etc. And we again go back and use a lot of the original designers. So for medical devices, it's a wee bit different, and you do a lot more upfront product planning. But for non-medical devices, this is the typical process that we follow. And it's well published, well publicized. And I think this is from the first product design toolkit. I've just pinched the slide from that. But the TRL scale is very useful to think of that. It was developed by NASA, I think, to evaluate the readiness of different technology levels. And you kind of go through from early concepts up to kind of full-scale manufacturing. Our view is that it's a bit weighted towards the early stages and not enough focus on the later stages. So we tend to use what we call the manufacturing readiness level, and it's a kind of more equal split between the early stages, idea, research, small scale prototypes, large scale, and then into production, pilot, and scale up, because there's almost equal amount of effort between the development stage and then the scale up into manufacturing phase. So I'm going to work through some examples and probably start about manufacturing level 4, which is where you get your first small scale prototypes, and give you some considerations as to each of the steps in between. And I should say before we get to this that every new product that you're developing, taking to market is different. Sometimes you might skip a stage. Other times you might go back and redo a stage if things don't test out properly. But the broad principles apply to most products that you're taking into manufacturing. So I'm going to start back at MRL level 4, which is the small scale prototyping. And rather than just talk through kind of bullet points, I'll give you some examples here. So this is a kind of first working prototype that we made of a heated stretcher product from a couple of months ago. It's currently probably at MRL 6, but this is a photo of it at MRL 4. It's a hand-built prototype, but it's representative of the final aesthetic design and the final ergonomic design. It's a mix of custom and off-the-shelf parts. So there's poles that are from tents, for example. There's battery down here that's from a Makita power tool, but it's representative of what the product will look like and how it will operate in the field. And typically we would use 3D printed parts or CNC machined parts for, we would use custom made electronics. This doesn't have any optics in it, but it is difficult to prototype optics. So we would use kind of next nearest off-the-shelf optics. And because this one's a medical device, we need to do a design history model for that. And this is very useful for doing your in-house evaluation and customer feedback, usability studies, etc. And it gives you a good appreciation of what's in the bill of materials, what are the manufacturing challenges, and the quality requirements for it. Another example here as we move on to MRL 5, which is your larger scale, still prototyping. And this is it's a personal capnometer product with some infrared optics in it. Capnometers measure CO2 as you breathe in and out through the device. So another medical device. Usually you would do that with vacuum castings. In this case, we've gone down the route of a development set of tools, probably at about $20,000 for the set of tools for this. And these are of a sufficient quality that we can use them for alpha trials with clients or with tame customers. Prototype products for clinical trials or clinical investigations, or we're getting feedback from potential customers. The experience from this can lead to developing your manufacturing strategy, getting more informed decisions on make or buy, or better estimates on your bill of material costs, identify critical components, and start some of the pre-compliance testing to make sure there are no surprises in the product. Okay, and it will inform the decision of how and when to invest in low volume production tooling. So as you move on to MRL 6, which is when you get into prototyping systems, then you're kind of setting up, well, you're doing your design updates from your alpha trials, and you're doing your final products. You're preparing to do your final products for your beta trials, and the beta units should be representative of the final product quality. So you start some of the lifetime testing of products. You'll do some of the product certification. You'll do your detailed design for manufacturing and tooling. You'll commission your injection mold tooling. You'll start detailed negotiations with suppliers, and you'll set up a small pilot production facility. And this is a kind of small pilot production unit set up as a U-shaped cell in a clean room for a medical device. So you'll start seeing that the investment as you get through this just gets more and more as you get closer to production. At this point, you're probably looking at putting quality agreements in place and sourcing some of your long lead time components, and making units suitable for beta trials. You get further into MRL 4, you're setting up your full production system. You've got your first samples from your injection molding tooling for production coming through. You're using parts made to do certification of the products from a safety point of view. You're starting to do and completing your technical file, putting specifications in place for materials, doing your work instructions, operator training. You're developing the job card for the process flow, the design history records for medical devices, and you're starting to do your final packaging and indications for use of your instruction manual. If there's automation required, then you're or any specialist equipment, which is what this is, kind of specialist equipment for a startup new product, and you're kind of getting ready for your first pilot production run. So you're then into MRL 8, your pilot production run. Typically, batch sizes might be kind of 200 to 1,000, depending on the value of the parts. And typically, you're doing 100% testing on every single one of them. You're doing burn-in testing and life testing, which is what's done here. This is for a US voting machine, and do lifetime testing of them. So that volume needs to be high enough that you get a good sense of where your issues are with yield or quality or rework. You get an idea of what your paid hours are for assembly, and your bill of material costs are really going to be. And you're going through the validation and verification process for all the steps and the equipment in your production process. And the 200 to 1,000 units are used for marketing purposes, early adopters, training salesmen, trade shows, sometimes a soft launch. We've had customers that will do a soft launch in a small country or even a city, and that before they kind of commit to rolling it out much further beyond that. You get to MRL 9, then you've got you're starting up one shift operation, and you want the flexibility there to scale it to 2 or 3 shifts if there's a real demand for the product. You're probably still at a single site using a manual quality system at the start, and then moving to a computerized system after that. You've got a continuous improvement system in place. You're doing limited redesigns at this point, just for the easy low-hanging fruit. But you're starting to put a Six Sigma process in place to minimize waste, rework, make it a more efficient production line. We still get involved for early returns programs, even at this stage, from a design point of view, and doing corrective actions, preventative actions, and for medical devices for post-marketing surveillance. And then finally, your MRL 10, you're into full-scale steady-state production. You're scaling up to multiple production lines over multiple shifts. Ideally, you're moving to a second source of production, and either with the same company or with different manufacturers, so that you've got competing locations to help drive down quality and improve cost. You can have the product made locally so that you're overcoming shipping costs or import duties. And again, at this point, you should be kind of full Six Sigma control of all processes. Quite often at this point, then the product has generated a bit of revenue, and the customers will start talking about a version 2, and that's where you have to start managing obsolescence from version 1. And obviously the service and repair centre are getting more and more organised to support the product through its expected lifetime. So that's a quick run through of all the different manufacturing stages. I know I'm probably getting close to my time here, so I've got a few supply chain management considerations, so top tips if you like. So these are top tips from new product development into manufacturing. So where possible, we always say use commercial off-the-shelf parts where possible. You know, they may be expensive or more expensive than a custom volume part that you develop yourself, but they should be more reliable and more available, and it gets you off to a good fast start. You can always cost reduce them later. Quite often we always like to invest in surface mount early, so you can easily spend more time debugging handmade printed circuit boards than you imagine, and the extra cost for tooling of boards or solder screen paste masks, etc., are often well outweighed. So always go for production quality electronics early. And then, as I said earlier, every product's different, so best thing is to figure out the best time within your scale up to invest in tooling. It is generally a high cost. They're difficult to change, certainly when you get to volume, and there'll be a different choice for different materials, different processes, whether that's injection molding or die cast parts or whatever. It's important that you identify the critical parameters early that do require supply chain management. If there's only one source of something, then you want to focus on that. Ideally, you can multi-source things, and we generally class suppliers into class 1, 2, or 3 suppliers. You put all your effort into class 1 and 2. You try not to have too many class 1 suppliers, so not too many specialist items. Example top right there is a large aspheric mirror, fairly specialist, and a bit of development time involved in that, so not something you can easily move from one supplier to another. Class 2 suppliers are more commercial off-the-shelf items, important items, or standard processes, so things like PCBs. There's lots of companies that can make them, but so that gives you the opportunity to shop around or to double source them, but they're important enough that they're not just a generic product, which is the class 3 suppliers that you would multi-source from. It's important that you get the timing right for agreements on tooling and commitments. Go too early and you're kind of constrained. Go too late and you're going to be late to market and struggling to do it all in time. And if possible, have multiple locations. Introduce some competition to help drive up quality and reduce cost, minimize freight, and improve your security. If a factory burns down, then it's good to have a second source of it. I think my last slide is, no, we've got 2 more to go, I think, managing priorities. So during the new product development process and into manufacturing, then there's often clashes in some of these areas, and you just have to work it out for yourselves. To select the key components well in advance, but not so early that that it's going to cost you a fortune, or the manufacturers kind of lose interest because it's not immediate for them. Then there's usually a kind of conflict between time to market and the launch date commitments that are made versus the maturity. Marketing people just want the product so they can sell it as soon as possible. The quality guys want to test it and make sure it's okay before they release it onto the market. There's always a tension there. Similar thing with sales volumes. The managing director is always forecasting big sales, and quite often they'll have one price in mind for the finished product. That product might only apply, that cost might only apply to the high volume, and the worst place to be is you've quoted it for a high volume, low cost product, but you're stuck in the low volume, high cost end of it. So you've got to manage that one. Talked about tooling, testing, kind of talked about that as well. A similar thing with regulatory testing. There's quite often high costs involved with that. So we would always advise doing some initial pre-compliance testing, where you're just paying for 1 or 2 days of a lab time to do the high risk items before you commit to the full testing. It gives you a chance to fix it before you pay for the full compliance tests. And then when you're doing your business plan for a new product, then you want a realistic set of worst case scenarios. You know, projects can take longer. You can end up with higher costs or having to do things again. You may end up with lower sales than you first expected, or competitor products. So you need to have a contingency in place for each of them and make sure that you've got the funding in place to cope with all the different scenarios there. And final one, I think, in this section is on the QMS system. There are advantages in bringing the discipline of a quality management system to new product design, and it really helps with the scale up into manufacturing. So I think that's all from me at the moment. I'll probably run out of time anyway. I believe we're having questions at the end. So if any of you want to ask a question later or follow up personally, then my contact details are there. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Russell. That was really interesting. I think especially considering people are usually fairly familiar or at least have an awareness of the TRL scale, but yeah, a detailed understanding of the MRL scale has been really interesting for me especially, but thank you very much. So next up, we will be passing over to Rory Ingram. He works with me in NMIS and he's the design engineering team lead, and he's going to be talking about engineering change management in product development. So on you go, Rory. Cheers.
Thanks, Hannah. Can you see my slide okay?
Yep, you're fine, thanks.
Excellent, thank you, and thanks, Russell. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to introduce some considerations around engineering change management, which is something you'll encounter regularly in product development and engineering design. But first, I'll give you a quick intro to myself for some context. So as Hannah says, I'm Rory Ingram, the design engineering team lead at NMIS. I joined the Advanced Farming Research Centre in 2016, which is now one of the NMIS specialist centres, which Hannah introduced at the start of the presentation. I went on to create the design engineering team early in 2019. I currently line manage 7 design engineers, and between us we have over 140 years prior industry experience in engineering design, and that's specifically in mechanical design, product design and systems design. This experience covers numerous sectors and varying criticality levels. So we're talking from consumer products all the way through to systems of systems, where failure could lead to loss of life or environmental disaster. So it's not stuff to be taken lightly. I previously worked in various roles in industry across several sectors for 13 years, with roles ranging from graduate design engineer to technical manager. I'm fortunate enough to have worked in SMEs, medium-sized multinationals and Fortune 500 companies. So I've got a good breadth of experience and lots of experience engaging multifunctional disciplines. I'm also fortunate to have supported products across the full product lifecycle, and I've been involved in implementing ISO 9001 quality management system in 2 companies and supported the ongoing audits in 4 companies. And I started doing all this after I studied product design at Strathclyde, coincidentally. So to set the scene, the session is not about organisational change. We're focusing on engineering changes, and these occur in product development or system development. So when we talk about a product here, we mean physical hardware, not apps and things, or software. And a point to note is that changes themselves are inevitable. design is iterative and stuff happens, to put it mildly. Hopefully, for those of you that are new to product development, this toolkit will raise your awareness on considerations, standards, approaches, processes and tools which could help you avoid any common pitfalls. Now, the presentation itself, as Ali mentioned at the start, is supported by a PDF guide which is downloadable from Product Design Scotland's website. So my thanks goes to Amy from Technology Scotland for pulling that together, capturing my ramblings. And this webinar will also be uploaded to NMIS and Technology Scotland YouTube channels. So what can you expect from toolkit number 9? Well, it introduces different drivers for change, different stakeholders to consider when making changes, types of design documentation often subject to change. It touches upon the need for version control. It touches on when to use revision of an existing part versus when to create a new part. It touches upon impact of change, change implementation. It introduces engineering change management processes, and it provides a brief intro to some software types which can facilitate change management too. So if we take things right back to basics, a design is essentially a combination of various requirements. These requirements will have been established as the best compromise to meet a specific design intent or purpose. I know it sounds strange calling it a compromise, but it generally is. So it's a compromise driven by a set of real-world constraints, for example, cost, size, manufacturability, material, production volumes, tooling, and so on. The requirements themselves can be geometrical, so you're talking size and shape, or you could be looking at performance requirements relating to loading, temperature, pressure, etc. Other requirements may relate to critical features or critical interfaces, which allow the part to connect to a mating part, which then allows it to function. Or requirements may relate to things like where to inspect a part, what kind of inspection or testing to do on a part or on a feature, and any applicable standards for features and so on. So in order to ensure that design requirements are clearly communicated to various stakeholders, there are various types of technical product documentation. It's not all about drawings. Now, whilst drawings may be the most obvious mechanisms to communicate design requirements, you also have several other forms of technical product documentation, such as bills of material, document lists, assembly instructions, technical specifications, etc. Russell talked about manuals and bills of material earlier as well. The International Standards Organization, ISO, have a document called ISO 10209, which lists lots of further examples of technical product documentation, so the list doesn't stop here. And in addition to these TPD documents that I've just mentioned, changes to design will typically have a knock-on effect on other documentation, and that's because design engineers work with or influence documentation used through the entire life of a product or system. So a change could impact past, current or future activities. Now, when I say past activities, you might be talking about purchase or production orders that have already been placed. Current activities might be ongoing manufacture, assembly or test, and future activities such as systems integration testing, installation and commissioning, preservation, storage and maintenance, all of which are likely to have their own supporting technical product documentation, which will consequently need to be updated to reflect the change that you've made to the design. Some other examples of knock-on effect of a design change could be a change of a geometry, which changes the centre of gravity of an assembly and affects the lifting plan for it. Therefore, the transport and handling instructions and potentially the lifting equipment required too would have to be changed. A change to an original equipment part number, which has been used on your bill of materials, which affects the assembly and test routines because it's no longer the same. Or a change to a bill of material item which requires a new purchase order to be raised generally, and so on. So there can be all kinds of changes. So as I've mentioned already, design is an iterative process. So there's likely to be multiple revisions in a product or system development. If these changes are not done in a controlled manner, it can lead to undesirable consequences. You could be looking at incompatibility, unintended obsolescence, and this could potentially be at component, subassembly or product or system level. You could be looking at scrapping stock. Again, this could be at component, subassembly, product or system level. Much more expensive at the high end there, top end there. The need for costly rework is a risk as well, and there's also the risk of quality escapes. So for example, something designed to an old revision which isn't fit for purpose makes it into an assembly or into service. And Russell mentioned a couple of these things as well, talked about recalls and rework and scrap. So it's not uncommon. Changes are required for a number of different reasons, but they're often attributable to errors, improvement opportunities, vendor requests if you're using supply chain to produce the parts, production requests when you're making parts in-house, obsolescence and the need to swap out BOM items from the bill of materials, and obviously changes in requirements will drive changes too. So we've already spoken about different kinds of technical product documentation which could be affected. Obviously these will have different stakeholders associated with them. For example, a change to an assembly and test procedure needs to be known to production personnel and quality control personnel. Other changes may impact the wider design team. For instance, people within your own company designing other aspects of the same product need to be aware of changes. Interfacing product owners need to be considered too. So this would be, someone working in a different company, but they're working on a parallel product for the same broader system, who may be impacted by the change. Changes which affect purchased parts need to be known by purchasing personnel and supply chain. Changes affecting pick lists or Kanbans need to be known by warehouse personnel and stock controllers. Changes which obsolete existing products need to be known by warehouse personnel and stockists as well. But ultimately, to understand who is impacted by change requires you to have a good solid grasp of how parts are processed, the stakeholder needs, impact on your stakeholders, downstream stakeholders, so their supply chain as well, and also the current stock status. So it's absolutely paramount that changes are discussed with stakeholders. And if in any doubt, you should always engage the stakeholders and ask them if a proposed change impacts them, and if so, the best way forward for mutual success. Russell mentioned ISO 9001, which is quite a nice segue here, because even if you don't have ISO 9001 accreditation on your quality management system, if you aspire to have it in the future, one of the fundamental requirements is for documented information to be subject to control of changes, for example, version control. So the technical product documentation I mentioned earlier is considered documented information. Now, there are many different approaches to version control. So long as the approach is documented and agreed at an organisational level, that's fine. But a lot of companies will differentiate between work in progress and work released for manufacture. And this is useful as it gives you a clear differentiator between development parts and production parts. Preliminary revisions might be used pre-production, and that would be they would be issued potentially after a design review, and it would be to allow multidisciplinary teams to align to the latest design freeze, basically so that everybody's singing off the same hymn sheet, and then any further development that's ongoing is starting from the same point with the same requirements. Release typically refers to release for manufacture and procurement, and some examples that we've seen in my team are shown here. So you can see some of these change from alpha to numerics, some change from numerics to alphas, some are more subtle and the placement of the decimal point is the differentiator, some are a bit more intuitive than others as well. And there'll be many other options. Some use alphanumerics as well. I've actually seen scenarios where you would use the designer's initial and a Z to show that it was an R&D part. So my parts would be ZR parts, and it was a bit confusing. And there was probably more than one R as well. So my preference is the second option, but each to their own. As long as it's agreed at an organisational level, that's fine. And as I emphasised earlier, requirements are pretty much everything in design, which is why you typically start with product definition and some form of specification. Version control is critically important at the product or system definition phase of a project, for example, in the creation of a product or system specification. So it's basically because it's imperative that everyone is working to the same specification for obvious reasons. But as you develop concepts to potentially meet the specification, the requirements, there's often a lot of options and a lot of combinations of options. So whilst it's important to be able to differentiate between discrete concepts, it isn't really paramount to have robust version control on each concept. So you can see on the slide there, I've put a small tick in the concept design stage. But as you start to refine that concept and engage with, or the chosen concept even, and engage with other disciplines outside of the design team, it's worth introducing version control to eliminate confusion. Basically, then you're again singing off the same hymn sheet and you're minimising duplication of effort if people are working to different revisions of a model. Hopefully it goes without saying that as the design develops through later design phases, including verification and ultimate validation, version control is essential. And another sort of key question, fundamental question in product development, I suppose, is whether to use a new part or a revision of an existing part. and it's typically driven by backwards compatibility, or the option for backwards compatibility. So if you're intending to revise a part and the changes intended have any impact on form, fit or function, then any instances where that part has been used will be impacted. So every subassembly, assembly, product or system which uses that existing part number may become obsolete by default, as you can no longer produce the constituent parts in line with the original design intent. So basically, if you have a change to form, fit or function, it's generally best to create a new part. And this will likely drive an update to a larger assembly, so it has a knock-on effect as well. Before implementing a change, you need to consider the impact of the change and the knock-on effect, like I just mentioned. This could be an impact on any of the stakeholders identified earlier. You need to ask questions such as, does the change impact the performance of the product or the broader system that's used in? Are any interfaces impacted, which drives the need to make changes to mating parts? Does the change invalidate any design validation, including but not limited to formal qualification or certification? Does the change impact the cost of the product or system? Does the change affect customer expectations of the product or system? And in turn, does that change require approval from the customer to avoid any breach of contract from your contractual obligations? Has all work in progress been identified and it is certain that it does not need to be stopped? Have all products or systems already in the market that use this part been identified, and is it certain that they don't need to be recalled or reworked? Do any components need to be made obsolete? If you're obsoleting components, do they need to be scrapped or can they be phased out? And which functions or stakeholders need to be made aware of the changes? Now, I don't list all these things I've just said on the screen here, but they're in the guide, so you can refer to that. This slide's basically showing you a high level and simplified example of what an engineering change management process may look like. There's no single standard for this, so just be aware that the acronyms may not be the same everywhere. People don't necessarily use all of the acronyms either. I've worked in an organisation that didn't have ECOs, but did have ECNs, which covered ECOs and ECNs, just to confuse things. But I'll explain what the ECOs and ECNs are in a second. So here we can see that upon an issue being identified, somebody in the organisation, not necessarily an engineer, creates an engineering change request or an ECR. This request then makes its way to engineering and they consider whether they need to act on it. If the engineering team decide to act on the engineering change request, then an engineering change order or an ECO, EIEIO, is planned. The engineers then revise any technical product documentation impacted. These changes are reviewed and approved, and then the latest documentation is released to the wider organisation, and they are notified by way of an engineering change notice or an ECN. I used to think of that as an engineering change notification personally, but I think notice is the correct language. The ECO process is probably the key one there, and it will typically require a reviewer and an approver to be identified for the change, stakeholders who need to know about the change to be identified, all affected parts and documents to be listed, a description of the change, a description of the impact of change for each affected part or document as well. And I'm afraid to say I'm old enough to have had to walk around the building and go around with engineering requests on paper around the different stakeholders, such as quality managers, finance directors, manufacturing and design managers, basically to get approval to make an engineering change. But you'll be pleased to hear that there's actually software that can help with that. There's some very popular and useful software types which can facilitate change management. These are competitive in the marketplace, so there's broad offerings at most price points. Product data management software, you'll get this from different CAD vendors to match the CAD software that you use, but there will be other ones that are sort of compatible with multiple systems as well. But product data management software is specifically for managing CAD data and revisions. It allows you to check in and out CAD and part data to ensure that only single users are editing at once. Whereas product lifecycle management software is probably more common in medium to large organisations, particularly within equipment manufacturers, because they own the product through the life to some extent. So they have to manage the life cycle. And it includes all the functionality of product data management, but it goes a step further, and it includes change processes and workflows, bills of material management, and it allows you to file or store other types of technical product documentation, not just CAD. So the key takeaways from this, it's a very high level insight to considerations around engineering change management. Some of the key things to note are change is inevitable, stuff happens, multiple stakeholders need to be considered in any change, multiple documents are likely to be impacted by a change, robust version control is essential, communication is paramount, and it's not a unique challenge, you're not alone. There's lots of people that have been through this and are going through this on a day-to-day basis that can help you with this, and tools and software exist to support you. And that's me, so thanks for your time. I shall await your questions at the end, and I'll pass back to Hannah.
Thanks, Rory. That was really interesting, and another variety of considerations to bear in mind for the impact of change there. So next up, we are going to hand over. Well, we're going to virtually hand over to Ben Hanley, who can't be here in person today, but Ali is going to share us a pre-recorded summary of scaling recruitment. So Ben Hanley is the director of Enigma People Solutions. So Ali, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. I am working this in the background. This is testing my Microsoft Teams knowledge to the max at the moment. So if you just give me a second.
No worries. And just, yes, while we're waiting there, just I see there's been some good questions coming in on the chat box there, and please feel free to continue putting them in, and we'll have a little Q&A session with all the panelists at the end.
Sorry, Hannah, you keep filling there, and I will. That's all worked very well in rehearsal. Seems to have completely vanished from my screen. If you give me just a second.
No problem. We're mixing it up this week with a virtual attendee, so pushing the boat out.
I think his presentation is less than the 20 minutes, so hopefully we'll be fine.
I think a point to note, just from my observation, looking at some of the tools, is that there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of things that come up time and time again. So, we're not having you on. These things are real scenarios and real considerations to make as you develop products. So I think that's quite powerful that there is some repetition in there, and maybe we could look to join the dots between some of the guides in the future as well, Ali.
Right, I'm going to have to do this a slightly different way from the way that we did it before, but hopefully it will still work. So I'm just going to share the screen, and you'll probably see something. Now, what are you can you tell me what are you guys seeing there?
Yep, we've got the video there.
Have you got the video there? Okay. Now, with apologies again, there is one more thing that I need to do, and that is. So I'm just going to do that again. Give me a little second.
No problem.
Because you would not have been able to hear that. Okay. Okay, so can you see that?
Yep.
And if you can let me know if you're not hearing it, that would be great.
Hi folks, it's Ben Hanley here from Enigma People Solutions. I'm delighted to have been invited to present to you today as part of the Technology Scotland Product Design Toolkit sessions. So I'm so sorry that I couldn't be with you in real time today, but hope that these slides that I'm going to take you through will be of use and of interest to you. So I'm going to share my screen now and see if we can dive into the presentation. So bear with me as I get that lined up. Okay, so yeah, my business is Enigma People Solutions, and we're talking to you today about some of the considerations in terms of building a team. So a little bit about me to start off with. I've got over 24 years experience recruiting for tech clients in Scotland, the UK, and internationally. To give you an idea of some of the areas of success that we've had as an organisation, Enigma People Solutions have had experience of hiring a technical lead that took product from concept to prototype, securing £26 million in funding for a client, taking a team of 7 to a business of over 100 people in 18 months. And also helped up build up a team from 3 to 20 technical engineers for a company that went on to secure over £100 million in funding and then went IPO earlier this year. So that gives you an idea of some of the success stories that we're proud of. Recruitment, however, can be frustrating, time-consuming, uncomfortable, costly, scary, challenging, but it's an essential part of your journey to success. So you need to have the right mindset around it. How much does it cost if you get a wrong hire? Well, there's been a report from the Recruitment Employment Confederation that found that a poor hire with a salary of £42,000 can cost a business more than £132,000 due to the accumulation of costs relating to training, lost productivity, lost time, and repeating the recruitment process. So how do you know when to scale? Being busy and seeing growing demand is not the trigger point for scaling a business. There's a combination of factors that must be considered and analysed, including future projections, current capabilities, and the infrastructure capacity for growth. In fact, I've included an interesting article I found on this by Cox Business and Forbes Insights into the pack that I think you'll be seeing from Technology Scotland. Be clear on the brief. Understands the strengths and weaknesses of your own team. And this is the point where it's maybe useful to look at some of the personality tests and balances, looking at tools like Talent Dynamics to really work out where you need to build and strengthen your team. The important thing is that remember that even a team like the All Blacks will have some superstars, but also will have a large number of people that are just really, really good at their jobs and contribute to the team in their own special way. So really understand how the particular role that you're recruiting for will help you achieve more. Talk a little bit more about the difference between perfection and excellence a bit later. Don't look for perfect. We're not all F1 teams, so looking for perfect makes little sense. It doesn't mean we can't look for excellence, though, and it's back to that idea of the people as components within the business delivering at a high level in their jobs, but they don't all have to be the perfect entrepreneurs for your business. Understand the difference between cost and value. Quite often we have conversations with clients that are very wary about the cost of hiring somebody and salaries and benefits and all the investment that goes into them. But you have to really weigh out the value of the role and how that's going to make an impact on your business. So really do know the real value of the role and make sure that you're clear on how that they're going to make your life easier for you in the medium and long run, and how they're going to move your business forward. One of the things that we're hearing a lot about is diversity and inclusion, and it is a challenge for companies to prove and to improve the level of diversity and inclusion within the businesses. And I think it puts people off a little bit because it is a difficult conversation for some to have. There's a simple solution there, though, and I would advise anybody in Scotland to use Equate Scotland. They have some good tools in terms of making sure the language you're using makes sure that you're open and inclusive and more likely to attract the right people, but also takes you through some thoughts on your own prejudices, if you like. Employee benefits. One of the things that quite often puts people off when they're looking at vacancies is if it's a small company, they feel that they're not going to get the benefits that they have in a larger company. And I really think that's a waste. There's a number of organizations and companies out there that really give quite good comprehensive benefits packages that you can bolt into your business. So for example, Vitality Healthcare has a great package that can be scaled for small, medium, and large businesses. So don't get left behind on offering great employee packages. I think that's really important in today's recruitment landscape. Employment law is really important for you to think about, and again, it's one of those areas that's a little bit of a headache. It's not the day job, and we don't want to be thinking about it. And so there's some simple things you can do about that. You do need to think about your HR policies, but you don't need to hire an HR manager full time. Typically that happens when you're maybe around 50 people, 40, 50 people or more. There are plenty of outsourced HR organizations that you can hire 1 day a week, 2 days a month, that sort of level, to make sure that you've got the right delivery of service to your business from an HR standpoint. And even the Federation of Small Businesses has some great HR tools. So there's really no excuse for not having those things in place, but it does take a bit of time. However, it doesn't need to break the bank. If we think about some of the common myths that stop us from hiring some of the right people for our businesses, one of the most common myths I come across is that academics can't get up to speed. It always bothers me, that one, because you have to think about all the spin outs from universities that do really, really well as proof that academics can indeed get up to speed. And in fact, most people in our industry at design level have come from an academic background. So I think people need to make sure they're open to bringing academics into their organizations when they have the opportunity. And probably lastly, the biggest challenge is the induction process in terms of making sure that the hire you've made starts off well. And whilst they'll have a lot of good intentions to make that switch work for them, there's also quite a bit of work that you can do for that. So there's things like, in terms of processes, you can record your processes and systems as you go along. So using something like Movavi as a video tool to then just take people through how they sign on to the system or how they start a new process off. And once you've recorded that once, you've got it there forever. So I think it's a really good tool, not just for the induction, but also for training and also for refreshing people's memories about how things work within your business. Also make sure that on their first day, you're in a position to sit them down and make sure that they can sign up to the new gym discount or the health app or whatever that is. I think that's a really important thing to do on their first day. Make sure there's a proper orientation of the building, the team, the systems, who to ask for information. And one of the best bits of advice that I can give is have a buddy system. Some of the clients that we've worked with have done an excellent job of having a buddy that will meet up with the new hire even before they've started, or have a couple of Zoom sessions with them to talk them through some of the projects that they're going to be joining into, so they've got an idea what the first few days and weeks will be like. And I think that's been really important for the success of some of those hires. So that's some of the ideas from me at this point. If you have any questions or would like to have a discussion about your recruitment plans and challenges, feel free to contact me at hello@enigmapeople.com and we'll get back in touch with you. May I also remind you at this point that we have a free recruitment audit offering for all Technology Scotland members, which has so far been really well received by those who have taken this up. So do get in touch to book that if you're planning any recruitment in the coming weeks and months. I'll hand you back over to the rest of the session. Thank you very much for your time.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ali. Another really interesting topic from Ben Hanley there, and one that I think is a good one to round out the sessions on. I see that we have had some really good questions being put in the chat, so I think I'd invite the panelists to come back on and we can just go through some of them and see what we've got. So question number one is for yourself, Russell. We've got one from Peter saying, how would the MRLs look for high value, low volume products?
Okay, well, you probably skip a couple of steps, but you're going to end up, instead of going to the manufacturing readiness 9 and 10, you're probably going to end up at MRL 8. So you not get beyond that kind of batch, that small batch level. It also depends, and we actually do quite a lot of that, and that either by design or by default, if the product doesn't get to high volume, then we'll continue doing small batch quantities sometime. But the other consideration is if it's small volume because the product is still changing, then you probably don't want to move it to an external manufacturer until the processes are stable. So a couple of things there, I guess. If it's low volume, high value, and it's stable, then you probably move it after you've done a low quantity. If it's still changing, either in software or in products or in cost, then you probably want to get that, leave it in with the development team to manufacture it if they can afford the quite, perfectly honest, it's a higher cost if you're using your development guys to build a product and test a product for you than it is to move it to an external location. But there'll come a time when it's stable that you want to move it, but in the short term you probably leave it with the development guys until it gets to that level. So
on that one, Hannah, can I just interject as well? I agree with everything Russell's saying, but just to add, because I've come from that kind of background and working in oil and gas equipment, it was very low quantities we were producing, and you'd be working on a product for several years, and it would be several £100,000, and it'd be a one-off some of the time, and you would have things to de-risk it, like sacrificial parts and things like that on critical components.
Yeah.
So that might be full scale, or it might be a prolongation on a forging or something to give you a representative sample, and you would do various testing on that. And you can do virtual testing as well, I suppose. You can use analysis software and stuff to de-risk the technology before you actually make it, and you invest all that time and money on the physical parts.
Thanks, Rory. Cheers. Another one for you then, Rory. For a new small startup, what would be your thoughts on when you... sorry, lost it. For a new small startup, what would your thoughts be on when you would develop your engineering change procedures, especially with very small team and initial limited resource? For example, would you develop the process before the first sketch, first prototype, or before pilot production? Maybe relate it to an MRL?
I'll maybe let Russell relate it to an MRL, because I'm not a TNL guy. Generally there's not really a black and white answer for this, but if you've got a small team with limited resources, I've taken some notes from the questions here. The best advice I could probably give is start with the basics, because you can only do so much with a small team, and you're already doing a lot probably. So it's worth starting with things like drawing templates, agreed version control approaches, sensible folder structures, and then incrementally introducing more systems and processes as you grow the team, or as there's a business demand and need to do so. Now that may be driven by things hitting the fan, because you might learn from experience. You might think, okay, we don't want that to happen again. Let's do a root cause analysis and let's put a prevention in place. So you might put goods inward inspection in place or something like that, because you've not noticed something's not going to work until it's too late, and if you've got inwards inspection in place, then you can catch it as it comes in the back door, and then you don't need to worry so much about scrapping a bigger assembly. So things like that come into play. You might find some customers expect you to be have an ISO 9001 or similar quality management system as well, especially if it's business to business sales you're doing. So that could be a motivator, because you might not be able to sell the product otherwise. But that's not always the case. And as the business grows, you might want the team to start sort of taking on some of the process implementation. So I've been in that situation in an SME. I've created a back catalogue of drawings. I've done the goods inwards inspection. I've created the manufacturing data sheets, etc., to knowing how to put the tools into an ultrasonic welder. And I didn't know anything about these things, but when you work in an SME, that's kind of what you have to do. So there's no real right answer. But I think you don't feel overwhelmed that you have to do it all at once. I think you can build up to it, and it's good to introduce things as soon as possible. Some aspects of that as soon as possible. And Russell, you've probably got some.
I was just going to add to that as well. I wouldn't bother at the kind of early concept and drawing sketches stage, but and probably not at the early proof of principle models either. But between that and your first prototype, you need to be scaling that up. The important step for us is always what we call the baseline release, where you've got a kind of first full design that you're going to put in the hands of some tame customers. And that has to be well documented. So you need to kind of be ramping up your QMS, your quality management system in advance of that. And if it is a medical device, it is quite prescriptive of and when you do that, depending on the classification of the medical device. So you have to have it in place for your kind of baseline release when you and for all the processes that come after that, which is probably around about TRL level 5 and manufacturing level 4 as a minimum. So. But not too early that it detracts from the creativity of the early stages.
Brilliant, thanks very much. We've got another question in from Jamie, primarily to yourself, Russell. It's another kind of
Okay.
linked up questions we've got. With earlier prototypes used with team customers, how is this relationship generally managed? As the product would not yet be certified, can it really be sold to them? If not, then must the prototype be gifted or given as a trial? If it is a trial, must there be a liability agreement in place, and how is that generally handled and funded?
All right, a few things there. Well, got two extreme cases there, not extreme, but two common cases that we come across. One is if a customer is kind of funding a product through development and scale up, they'll generally do an alpha trial, a beta trial before they do a pilot launch and then a full launch. For your alpha and beta trials, the cost of that is they're not sold at that point. They're generally given to customers in order to get feedback, and the customers will usually sign a form to say that, yeah, we'll use this product, we'll give you feedback, we'll not tell anyone else about it. Whether that's legally binding or not, I don't know, but the aim there is to get feedback on the product, not to make income from it, so you're not selling it. The other example is where you are selling something, and it's generally you can only do that if the customer is prepared to take the product as seen, basically sold as seen, rather than with any warranty. And some customers will do that in order to give them a competitive advantage. So it's typically high value equipment, for example, that will give them an advantage if it works. So they want to be the first user of that new equipment typically. And we've got an example at the moment where someone's placed an order with our customer for a product that hasn't even been developed yet, and our customer was waiting to get the money in for the product before they gave us the go-ahead to develop it. Bit of a strange one, but that customer is so desperate for the technology because it will give them such a competitive advantage that they're prepared to accept it, warts and all, as a first uncertified product. So yes, it can be done, but generally these early stage things are unsold. They're on loan. Okay, hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think that's all the ones that have been put in the chat. If anyone else does have any questions for Rory or Russell, please feel free to pop them in now. As I think Rory's popped in the chat as well, please feel free to check out the other toolkits. As Ali have said, there's 10 of them. They're all available online now. They've all been published, and they are available on the Product Design Scotland website. If there is no further questions, I think we'll wrap up. But you can see we've got contact details in the chat for all the speakers today, and also I'll pop in myself as well. But thank you very much for joining. I'll give you a few seconds to put in any last-minute questions, but as far as I'm aware, I think we'll wrap that to a close. So thank you very much to Ali and Product Design Scotland for hosting this joint webinar with us, and of course thank you to Russell and Rory and Ben.
Okay, thanks all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you
That
very
was
much.
useful. Okay.
Yep, take care. Cheers.
Yep.